Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Catch the NFL podcast, where we give you up to date NFL news, NFL debate, and most importantly, fantasy football predictions. Shout out to the Catch fam tuning in today. Shout out to all of our subscribers, and shout out to my boy Steven. What is going on, man?
Hey, just hanging, man. I'm excited to break into this AFC West. Got my boy Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill,
Patty M.
Justin Herbert. A lot of good
Yeah,
stuff, man.
a
You got
lot
you
of.
got you got unfortunately the bad teams out of this
Hey,
division.
I got Drew Lock, baby. I'm not
You got Josh
upset at
Jacobs. You
all.
got Josh
I got my
Jacobs.
guy, Josh Jacobs, who apparently got the shit slapped out of him by Jalen Ramsey in joint practice today.
No
Apparently,
way.
there was like a huge fight. Yeah. So I don't
Is
know. I'm,
it?
I'm gonna have to look into that. But yeah, man, I think we're both super pumped. This is obviously an extremely exciting division. Um, so let's crack right into it. Let's break down some breaking news before we get too excited here. Our guy Tim Tebow released from the Jags. That would have been of yesterday, but I'm a little bummed about this. I mean, I was watching some of the preseason, like people were his blocking. I don't know if you saw that. It
It
was
was
going
pretty bad.
it
It
was
was
going
pretty
like
bad.
viral.
Yeah.
But I think we both love Tim Tebow. We
Yeah.
de- we definitely want to see him succeed, but he has been released by the Jaguars. So unfortunate. What you got on Chase Claypool?
Yeah, so Chase Claypool, he came down with a sprained ankle recently, really upsetting too. He also had that, what we all feared to be like a pretty serious injury in that Hall of Fame game. So really just want him to make it through preseason because this guy is an electric, explosive weapon. So we'll be monitoring that sprained ankle for sure. And we're going to be
Yes,
dropping some wide receiver rankings soon as well. So that'll be included.
someone that I take in like every mock draft. So
Yeah.
probably something I need to monitor. Uh, Jamal Adams, man, long-term contract,
Mhm.
big
Yeah,
money.
he got the bag. What was it, like $70 million?
It's a lot.
He,
I know.
yeah,
I know it's a lot. Put that in.
apparently he was gonna like file grievance and act like he was a linebacker if they didn't pay him like accordingly, just to get like a bigger contract. Man, agents are going all over the place to try to find their clients' bags.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we both like Jamal Adams, but I don't know, man. Do you think it was the right decision?
Not worth two first round picks, but I
Yeah,
mean, at this point, you got to give him the cash
sure.
because, dude, the amount of draft capital that is for Jamal
Yeah,
Adams as safety. I mean, you can
yeah.
be the best guy in the league, You could be a Ronnie Lott, and it still doesn't matter.
Biggest NFL news of the week, of the month, of the day that we need to mention is Josh Rosen got released by the San Francisco 49ers today.
Huge, huge, man. What's gonna happen, dude? Who's gonna be the next Tampa Bay with the franchise quarterback? I don't know.
Did you know he was on Tampa Bay's practice squad as
I
well?
forgot about that. I
Yeah.
actually like there was like a brief 30 minutes where I was like, is he gonna learn under Tom Brady, man? Is Tom Brady gonna teach him the way? And then I was like, yeah, no, it's Josh Rosen.
And I mean, he may have a job in the NFL right now if it wasn't for Tua being around on the Dolphins.
What dude, what the hell is wrong with Josh Rosen? Is he just that
I
like
do
pain in
like,
the
I
ass?
do,
Like what the hell?
I do think it's odd because of that group of quarterbacks. He's just like, as some people, had him ranked above Josh Allen, right? I mean, and he's
Dude,
just
people
like,
loved him.
yeah, it is strange. But shout out to our boy Josh Rosen. We
Yeah,
we
man.
wish you the best. I'm sure he'll get signed, man. There's such few quarterbacks, in the league that I'm sure he'll land somewhere. So
It is pretty funny that the only jersey Tyler has, he's
yeah.
a big Cardinals fan, obviously, and the only jersey he has is Josh Rosen. It is
Shout out,
pretty funny.
shout out to T Pain, our boy Tyler.
Yeah.
Big respect.
Rest in peace, Cardinals fans on that one.
All right, let's jump into it, baby. I'm gonna let you kick off the night with the Kansas City Chiefs, man.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you can't really start anywhere else other than the leader of this team, the leader of the league, my favorite player, just absolute sexiness, man. Patrick Mahomes, ADP 24, quarterback one. We're going to do our quarterback rankings and we're going to dive super deep into Patrick Mahomes. But with that said, this guy is the clear cut number one quarterback in my mind entering this season. Obviously, just a massive arm. He can hit any target. The real question is about like if there can be other weapons outside of the trio that I'm going to talk about today. Well, actually, it's kind of like a quad, but you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I picked for my running back, ADP 26, running back number 14. And you got Tyreek Hill is who I chose to lead the receiver group from my trio. But that's, what I'm super high on Tyreek Hill this year. But I mean, I do think that Travis Kelce is probably the MVP of this team in terms of and that leader in the receiver position, just because he's so valuable.
Sure.
But Tyreek Hill, ADP 11, wide receiver 2. I want to get your gauge on Patrick Mahomes. You are always targeting this guy on your mock draft, so I know you're high on him too. Like, how important is it to have a guy like Patrick Mahomes on your fantasy team? You're gonna have
Well,
to reach for him. You're gonna have to reach for him.
here's the thing. If Patrick Mahomes is your fantasy quarterback, then every single week your opponent looks at your roster and they say, "Oh shit."
Yeah,
Like they don't even really need to get past the quarterback position, right? They're just looking at Patrick Mahomes and they're like, I have a chance to lose this week because
yeah,
I am against Patrick Mahomes, who, coming into this 2021 season has the ninth easiest schedule in terms of quarterbacks, against defenses. So I'd be pretty scared as well. And I mean, a little bit of regression over the last 2 years for Patty, I mean, slight regression, right? I
mhm.
mean, which is crazy. Like, still threw for over 4,700 yards last year, 38 touchdowns. Didn't play in one game. If I'm not mistaken, it was the end of the season. They sat him, if I
Yeah.
remember
He
correctly.
got tweaked up in the middle of the season too, I believe. Against the Broncos, he had that kind of like knee tweak.
Right.
Um, yeah, man.
And I mean, the year before, he missed 2 games, right?
Yeah,
And
injuries have been a thing that have been following him a little bit.
sure, sure. But I mean, really, since his sophomore campaign, where he threw for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, I don't want to say we haven't seen him return to that form, but there's been a little bit of regression. But nonetheless, his
Yeah,
regression
it's still
is
the
exceptional. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's still first ballot Hall of Famer at
Sure,
his
sure.
regression.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's no knock whatsoever. But even with those, little bit of regression numbers, your opponent's still going to say, "Oh shit."
yeah,
And if you
yeah.
have two of these guys, if you're able to land two of these guys on your fantasy roster, in a 10-man league, it's doable. In a 8-man league, it's very doable. I've gone out and gotten all three.
Mm,
Um, but if you can get two of these guys, like you have a chance to win every week. And I think
yeah,
that's where people are valuing Travis Kelce over running backs because their strategy is to go out and get Kelce in the first round and then move along and pick Patrick Mahomes in the second or third round. But I'm telling you, when you go to do your real life draft for fantasy, the
he's
closer
gonna go
week one
early.
gets, I'm telling you, man, Patrick Mahomes in a majority of leagues won't be available past the second round. But I love all these guys. You said you're trying to get my gauge. I've always loved Tyreek Hill. I love
Mhm.
this offense. I love what they do. So I'm all for this. If you go out and you pick any of these guys number one overall in your fantasy league, I'm not going to look at you, cross-eyed or anything because they're just that good, and
You could take Travis Kelce at tight end with like the second pick, third pick, and
sure,
there's an argument to be made for that. And I didn't
sure,
even pick him for my trio. Like, that's how explosive, how dominant this offense is. If you can get a piece of those critical fantasy players there, and
yeah,
the guy who's making this whole thing work is Patrick Mahomes. And I think another thing that's so important to factor in and bake into Patrick Mahomes this year is the fact that they saw that Super Bowl embarrassment. They saw Patrick Mahomes get his ass beat, not by his fault, I'll say that, but because that O line was atrocious. And they said, that's not happening anymore. We're not letting our $500 million man get hurt anymore. We're going to invest. They went out and they got Orlando Brown, Joe Tooney, bringing in here, reinforce that O line, strengthen it up coming into next season. And I think just imagine Patrick Mahomes being able to not be under pressure. I mean, that's
two
going to be critical.
two thoughts, right? Okay, first thought is if you're the Ravens, why are you aiding the team that's preventing you
Yeah,
from getting to the Super Bowl, right? I mean,
that was
uh,
weird.
a little weird, right? Especially taking, such an important player, to Lamar Jackson's value, right? Um, Next thought, more of a question that I want to bounce off you is this still the best team in the NFL? Because I think from a roster standpoint, you could argue that the Buccaneers, for example,
Yeah.
are the better team. And like, I just have a feeling that uh, I have a feeling it's not over between the Bucks and the Chiefs.
No,
You
dude, I
know?
don't either. I think it's also what the NFL wants too. I think they would
Yeah.
love to see a rematch of that Super Bowl. I mean, it's just fitting too. I mean, obviously, both of us were obsessed with Peyton Manning. It's like Tom Brady can just make quarterback rivalries so fun, so riveting. And the league wants it to be Mahomes versus Brady. I mean, he is the GOAT replacer once he leaves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. It's hard because a part of me is like, I think the Chiefs are not as good as they were last year, to be honest. I think they have not really improved this offseason. Their receiving core outside of Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill is actually pretty bad, which we'll get into,
Sure.
which is kind of sketchy. Their O line is like vastly improved. Their defense has some question marks. I mean, what's going on with Frank Clark?
And not to interrupt you,
No,
outside of Frank Clark's uh, off the field issues. And this, we don't want to put stock into non-important injuries, right? But he did have MRI today for a hamstring injury, which like,
hamstrings are serious though.
and
They stay.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and I do think outside of Orlando Brown, you're right. Like they didn't really do anything in the offseason. I know
Yeah,
they don't have a lot of cap space, but
they're stretched
yeah,
thin,
yeah. And they got
but
to
yeah,
extend Tyrann Mathieu next. I mean, they're very thin. But go ahead.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
over the next couple years, you're going to start seeing these guys maybe move off of some pretty big name players.
Yeah,
And I think that's going to be both interesting shakeup. But I think the point of it is like the Chiefs are definitely in win now mode for sure.
hmm
Like,
hmm
but I do think Tampa Bay is the better team. And honestly, I think you could also make arguments that the Rams are maybe a better overall team too. But the
sure.
thing is that the Chiefs present a certain method of the fact that on any given play they can score a touchdown, which not a
Yeah,
lot of teams do present
yeah,
that. The absolute explosiveness of Tyreek Hill is something that you really have to gauge in. This
yep.
guy can score a touchdown every time he touches the ball, and that Super Bowl was so random, so weird to me. There were so many drop passes. Patrick Mahomes was throwing ridiculous side throws,
He was.
diving,
I mean, he
and
had
people were
someone in his.
dropping passes,
Yeah,
man. It was annoying as hell.
yeah. I mean, he had someone in his face every play. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a great game plan. I mean, you got to hand it to the Bucks, right? But we don't need to, kind of sulk in the Super Bowl too. I
It
mean, it's
was
very
tough.
important. It's important. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. Um, but I think you're right about the offense overall. Like, I don't think this is the best team in the NFL, but hands down, I would still put this offense over any offense in the league.
Mm,
As much as I like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey, and I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have a good year, it just boils down to Patrick Mahomes. He is that
yeah.
good. He could have, uh, you could go out and fill the rest of the offense with just 6 round draft picks. But if
Mhm.
Patrick Mahomes is there, there's a chance that they will score and that they will beat you, right? So, uh,
Yeah. And I'm glad you touched on Clyde Edwards-Helaire because I think this is somebody we are both super high on in fantasy. And where you're getting him in drafts, third round, fourth round, I mean, in 12-man leagues, that's just insane value. I
yeah,
mean, if you could pair up a guy like Clyde with maybe 2 other backs or some strong receivers, your team is looking very nice. And the thing about Clyde is, in my opinion, I think he has the most breakout ability of a second year plus type of player at the running back position. This is a Brian Westbrook type of back. We just talked at length about him in the running back rankings video that we'll be dropping. Go in there, watch that video because both of us just talk him up, talk about the scenario that is in play with the Chiefs. I do think Andy Reid's finally going to start utilizing him like Brian Westbrook. And if you can see that positive regression come into play in the red zone, get touchdowns, see more passing volume, all of these things, are a top 10, top 8 running back type of characteristics. And I also think, too, look back at that season, right? He obviously got hurt a little bit. It was a fluke injury, not something that would like reoccur. But look at what they did in the Super Bowl. They came out in the second half. Dude, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was probably their best player outside of Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. He was running through Tampa Bay at times. So, I mean, I don't know. Give me your thought real quick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Sure, I think you touched on a lot of great points, but another kind of glaring great point is that they have, on average, the fifth easiest schedule for
Mm-hmm.
running backs this
Damn.
year,
Damn.
and really, I mean, he still played 13 games last year, 181, rushing attempts for 803 yards, about 4 yards per carry, four touchdowns. So, I think. The touchdowns is the scariest thing from a fantasy perspective. But also when you look at what he did in the receiving game, I mean, just under 300 receiving yards in one score. I mean, it's not great, but keep in mind, I mean, he's a rookie, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of expectations for him to live up to, right? I mean, people kind of assumed that because he was on the Chiefs and a part of that offense, that he was just going to take off and skyrocket right away. And what we're seeing with a lot of running backs, I mean, your rookie year and a lot of times your sophomore year, or I guess the point I'm trying to make is your sophomore year turns out to be better than your
Better,
rookie
for
year.
sure.
And it's not always the case, right? But I think with just the speed of the game, all those expectations he had last year, I think there's a lot of reasons to kind of expect a more positive year this year. And we know, like you said, we broke that down a little bit more in our running back ranking videos. But I think he's going to have a great year. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to have a lights out type of season or anything. But I certainly think he's going to have a great year from a fantasy perspective, especially where you can draft him, like you said. So,
Value is just nuts on him,
and
man.
I think kind of the expectation for the most part was really like this team is always going to be able to get in the red zone, and then this guy's going to score 10 plus touchdowns every year,
Yeah.
and maybe that's not the right expectation to have. But that doesn't mean he's going to be a bad running back. So, yeah, I'm huge on all these guys. And once again, it's maybe I'm setting the wrong type of expectation. It's because they're on the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
But it's like who does he really have to compete with from from the running back position? And
Nobody.
I mean, Williams is a pretty serviceable back actually,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that he's going to be able to take that number one back position and kind of run with it. So I think he'll have a great year. As I think all of these guys are going to have
So,
fantastic years.
what are your thoughts about Tyreek? Because just real quick, I think this is somebody in the past I've been very hesitant about because I always think he's going to get hurt. He's so small, right? But this year, it's like, dude, I cannot get my eyes off of this guy. He's my wide receiver one on the year. I think he's going to be better than Devontae Adams. And a large part of that is just because this year, I think is going to see his highest target share, his highest volume. And I think that's because outside of him, I really don't know where they're going to go. At least last year, Sammy Watkins, while I have many negative thoughts about that guy, I think he did have consistency with Patrick and consistency with
Sure.
that offense. And Tyreek Hill is also just, I mean, with the extra game, with the extra volume, this could be like record type of season in terms of yards per catch. Those are the things that give you such fantasy value. So I don't know. Give me your 2 cents.
Well, I think that Tyreek Hill always presents that value of potentially coming out and having a record-setting year because he's that good. And I've always been high on Tyreek Hill. Like I've almost always had him as my receiver one. And I think the argument versus Devontae Adams. A lot of people talk about Devontae Adams and say he scored 15 touchdowns last year, but so did Tyreek Hill. And the thing with Tyreek Hill is when he is not just scoring the touchdown, he is getting those 40 to 60
Yeah,
yards
chunk plays.
getting into the end zone. And if he's not getting in the end zone, he's getting those 40 to 60-yard catches. I mean, he's just an absolute animal. The best Madden player of all time.
Oh
I've
my
had like
gosh.
4,000 receiving yard seasons with this guy in Madden. Like I love Tyreek Hill. I love this offense. I can't say enough good things about them. But I will put out that they have a relatively, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, they have a good schedule. But overall, this team, something we'll break down later on, has a relatively difficult schedule, and for the quarterback as well as the running back, from a fantasy perspective, those are the people who have the easier side of things. The
Hmm.
receivers are who have kind of a middle ground, more difficult, strength of schedule, including that of Travis Kelce. So, um, and I do think, this team, Tyreek Hill is going to benefit when Travis Kelce is not benefiting, and vice
Yeah.
versa. And that's kind of where the issue is. If they just had one more guy, they would be
Dude,
unstoppable.
they could have had Juju Smith-Schuster and Will Fuller this
Or
year.
Julio. I mean, if they could have just gone out and gotten one more guy, and Will Fuller would have been great. You're right, and Juju
Holy
would have been great.
shit, dude. Imagine Will
Juju
Fuller
would
in
have been
this
scary,
offense.
man. Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
my
if they had
gosh.
one more guy, and maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire can step up and turn into receiving back, who knows, right? But
Well, let's talk about their other guy real quick because it's weird because like I said, like I identified Tyreek as being the leader of the pack, but I think in terms of fantasy value, Travis Kelce probably offers maybe the biggest competitive advantage in all of fantasy football. I mean, this guy is like here, while his biggest competition is like here. I mean, you would say tight end number two, Darren Waller, maybe like a
I
George
I
Kittle.
I would honestly argue that I think Waller's pretty close,
You like
actually.
Waller more? I mean, his target
No, no,
value is
I
crazy in
I
Las
don't like him.
Vegas.
I'm not going to say that I like him more, but I think that Waller has proven that he's pretty close to Kelsey.
Mhm.
I don't
Well,
think they're that far apart, but go ahead.
yeah, let me ask you two questions about Kelsey. One is, let's say you take him in the first, because I think that's going to be something a lot of people in the middle of the first round are going to be thinking about here. If you do that, what do you have to do in the second and third round? And then I'll let you answer that part first, because that shit's, I'm thinking about that shit right now too, man. I mean, dude, get Travis Kelsey in the first. You are
Uh,
looking good,
I'll
man.
go back. I'll revert. I mean, if you pick Travis Kelsey in the first, then you got to go out and get Tyreek Hill and or Patty Mahomes. Like you just got to
You
go all
think?
in, and then you just go like any running backs who present any value the rest of the draft, and one or two more receivers. But
Okay.
I think you got to go all in, and a lot of people probably disagree with that. But
Dude, if you pair him and Mahomes, you're
sure,
very good every week, and you
yeah,
know at
yeah.
least
I would
it,
say you have to at least get him in Mahomes, right? If you somehow slide Hill in there, if you have picks, the very, or excuse
maybe
me,
nine and nine
well,
and on the back end of the first.
sure, yeah, or if you have, picks 12 and 13, right, and you can go
Yeah,
out and you can get Kelsey slides, right, and Hill slides, you get both of them, and then you land Mahomes, which can happen,
dude,
right?
that's just ridiculous.
I
That's
like I said,
ridiculous.
I don't personally think it'll happen, but I think you have to go all in is kind of my answer. I mean, there's plenty other strategies that you can entail, but I think you just gotta go all in, man, and let Patty ride it, man.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, I think we both are super high on him, so we would recommend that. But let me ask you this last question before we jump off the Chiefs, because we could both go on about these guys forever, dude.
I know. I was just getting the
Um,
same feeling, like, oh, we
it's
get to sit
one
here
of
and
the yeah, it's one of the best
yeah,
fucking offenses I've ever seen in my whole life, dog. It's
yeah, yeah.
nuts. But outside of those guys, outside of Kelsey, outside of Edwards-Helaire, outside of Hill, Mahomes, who is your guy?
I mean,
Anybody, or is there nobody?
like I guess McCole Hardman.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Would you draft him? Would you draft him?
I've mentioned it, and in deeper leagues like a 20-man league, yeah, I think you need to
That video was crazy. Yo. If you haven't
yeah,
seen it, go watch that shit. That
yeah.
was a good video.
I think I brought that up in that video. I think you need to consider it. But I don't know how many people play in 20-man leagues, right? I mean, I feel like this was a fantasy debate last year. Like
Yeah.
people are going out and like, oh, who's the Chiefs number two? Let's get him. And
Nobody.
well, people drafted Hardman, Pringle, and Robinson as and Watkins, right? And or at least maybe not didn't draft them, but throughout the season went out
Yeah.
and picked them up, right? And it didn't really do anything for anyone. And I
Mhm.
guess that's where I'm at is like I don't know if it's going to do anything for anyone. And I wish it was different. And I hope that it's different, right? And I mean I hope that I'm the guy picking them up in the middle of the season, but
Yeah.
I don't know like outside of a 20-man league if the value is quite there for me to go out and pick a McCole Hardman or Pringle or any. And I like Pringle because his name is Pringle. Like I want him on
Yeah.
my roster. Like I got the Pringles, bro. But
It's a
like,
perfect fantasy name for your
yeah,
team if he works out.
yeah. But I just, I do love Pringles. Like I'm not even
Yeah.
joking, bro. But I don't know, man. For me, I'm just like, I just don't think the value is necessarily there. So
I would just say if you're nearing the end of your draft, in the last round, take a shot on one of these guys, see how it plays out week one, maybe week two as well. And if it doesn't work out, cut them. Because if you can get one of the guys and they end up blowing in the first, like blowing up in the first round, you then debate, do I trade this guy at peak value or do I just hang on to him and see how this guy rides out for the full year? But shit, there was that one season where Sammy Watkins for the first 2 weeks, like averaged like some pretty ridiculous fantasy value.
yeah,
Somebody in our league traded him, and you're going to get serious premium value on that type of deal. So I
sure.
would definitely think we both agree that we're not too like confident about another weapon exploding out of this offense. But
But I hope that someone does. I truly
yeah,
do because that means that the Chiefs are even that more dangerous.
yeah,
So um, let's go to a team equally as dangerous and the Denver Broncos, baby. Drew
yeah,
Lock.
baby.
So obviously not actually as dangerous, but a lot of people have the Denver Broncos as a whole as the best sleeper team in the
Mhm.
NFL this year. And I think that they have a pretty tough road considering that this division also has the Chargers and it also has the Kansas City Chiefs. And it has the Las Vegas Raiders, who will probably not be very good whatsoever. But like I always say, they will try to beat you. That is like
Yeah,
their whole mission. Like they're not going to be good or bad. They're going to be that team that just hopes that
ruins your
they beat you.
season. They just
Yeah,
ruin your season, like that
exactly.
Chiefs game where they just randomly beat the shit out of them, and it's
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
Yeah. So, but yeah, let's talk about the Drew Lock versus Teddy Bridgewater situation because it obviously shows that the Broncos do not have full faith in Drew Lock. Like,
Mhm.
you know, that's not a signing that you go out and make because you want depth at the quarterback position. It's a signing that you go out and make because you know that you need a starter, right? That's
Yeah,
not Teddy Bridgewater is a proven starter in the NFL, right? Um, but Drew Lock comes out last week and kind of lights it up in the preseason game. And I love
yeah.
Drew
He
Lock.
had a hell of
Like
a game.
I know that he might not be like an exceptional quarterback, but I
You
like
drafted
him.
him. You
I
drafted him.
drafted him last year.
You
I
drafted
had
him.
a okay. Well, I had a complete fumble at the quarterback position, and I
Yeah.
went out and I drafted four quarterbacks at the end of the draft.
It ended up
Four.
working out for you. It worked out.
Well, I ended up with Justin Herbert being my main
Yeah.
quarterback last year. So it didn't necessarily work out in terms of my draft selections. But I
Yeah.
had a feeling that Drew Lock could come out and be a sleeper guy who was a good quarterback last year. I wasn't expecting a lot out of him, but expecting good fantasy value.
Mhm.
I'll say that much. Obviously, that did not happen, right? Only played 13 games, 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. And what I was getting is that I like Drew Lock like as a guy. Like I'm a fan of Drew Lock, right? Uh, do you think that what do you think Drew Lock can do this season if he is the starter? And do you think that he's kind of hanging by a thread with Teddy Bridgewater looming over him, with John
Yeah.
Elway looming over both of them, saying like, "Oh, I should be out there, man."
Yeah.
You know,
Seriously, Elway's about a minute away from walking out there and trying to play it out for himself.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Yeah, man. I don't know. I mean, I think this story is like one of the best narratives kind of coming into the season for many reasons. But the primary one is what Drew Lock's going to give this offense is a lot more firepower in terms of big plays, deep shots, more opportunities to be throwing the ball because they're probably going to be making it's going to be very similar to like Jameis Winston. You know what I mean? Like he made like the Buccaneers like really good fantasy wise because he was always trying to launch it deep. He threw a shit ton of picks, which like what I'm narrowing down is like I think he's gonna help Jerry Judy. I think he's gonna help Cortland Sutton. I think he's gonna help Noah
Judy.
Fant. Yeah, Judy, your guy, you're obsessed with him. And by the way, you're onto that before a lot of people were onto that. But let me just say, I think Drew Lock, when you're looking at him, if he's starter week one, my stock on everybody surrounding Drew Lock is higher than if Teddy Bridgewater's the starter.
Sure.
I think the values are completely different. I think Teddy Bridgewater, while he might increase PPR value for guys like Jerry Judy,
Today.
I'm not too hopeful on like any of the other guys. He's just such a safe quarterback. Like I really hate any offense under Teddy Bridgewater. But both of these guys are stayaways for me. I don't know how
So
you feel.
I want to read this off to you. Drew Lock. Well, Drew Lock and or Teddy Bridgewater, right?
Yeah.
Third easiest strength of schedule for quarterbacks this year. Devontae Williams and or Melvin Gordon the third. Second easiest strength of schedule for running backs this year on average, as well as Jerry Judy and company. We know it's Jerry Judy at the top, right? Seventh easiest strength of schedule for wide
Holy
receivers
shit,
this
man.
year. So that's where I'm looking at this team, outside of the whole sleeper debate, because I think their defense is going to be very good.
Yeah.
I
Improved.
have a lot of faith in Jerry Judy. I think if Cortland Sutton comes back healthy, he's going to play well. I think Tim Patrick is a great number three receiver. I think Noah Fant is a great tight end. Well, maybe not a great tight end. I think Noah Fant is a good tight
Dude,
end.
I think he's
But
talented as fuck, dude.
yeah,
He's
so
really talented.
when you put those couple of guys and you've got this young running back in Devontae Williams, and then you've got Melvin Gordon, kind of the experienced vet, and then you look at the strength of schedule, if Drew Lock can come in and just not fuck up and fumble
Yeah.
8 times and throw 15 interceptions, and he only took 19 sacks last year. I mean, he only played 13 games, but actually that's not that bad in terms of sacks, right?
Hmm.
This team can be very fantasy relevant, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, and overall, outside of a fantasy perspective, they actually have a pretty easy schedule when you look at like the Chiefs' schedule for
Hmm.
comparison. Um, so I absolutely think there's something here, right? There's a lot of hype. Kind of, it's not the biggest hype surrounding some of the teams in the NFL coming in this season, but there's hype out there for this squad that people aren't talking about the Denver Broncos enough. And certainly from a fantasy perspective, like my trio's Drew Lock. I put down Devontae Williams, but I have a question mark. I'm going back and forth between Melvin Gordon
I like
and
Javante more. I like him more. I think he
I
has way more long term value too.
sure I think long term value 100% agree, but part of me is leaning more towards Melvin Gordon
Hmm.
again. That's where I started at. You've seen me taking mock drafts, and
Yeah.
recently I've started to go towards Javante Williams. I think I'm actually back at Melvin Gordon, but I think it's a great handcuff situation,
Yeah.
especially when you look at that strength of schedule being the second easiest. Um, and really, like where you're drafting these guys, they're like right next to each other in terms of
Yeah.
their RB rankings and their average draft projection. I don't think you should feel too bad going either way, as long as you have conviction in which one you pick, whatever, because their strength of schedule is so easy. And I don't think we're necessarily going to know until the season starts. That's my honest opinion. I don't think we really know who the lead back's going to be, but I think both of them are going to be heavily
Mhm.
utilized. And I'll actually let. I want to get your thoughts on Javante Williams. I mean, we know he did in his last year in North Carolina. I mean, over
A
1,100 rushing
beast, bro.
yards. Yeah, I mean,
Him and
19
Michael Carter,
touchdowns.
dude. Can you like
Yeah,
imagine playing that running back core?
yeah,
Like
crazy.
they had this game against Miami where they ripped him up for like I believe it was like 400 rushing yards. Like these dudes are the real fucking deal,
Yeah,
bro. Like
I think it's gonna be and they have a pretty good O line, something
yeah.
we haven't gotten into. So like, I think that they're probably going to have pretty good year. Like, here's a big, not to cut you off and get away from the running backs, right? But when you hear about this team offensively, like the big conversation is, what if this team had an elite quarterback like an
Aaron
Aaron
Rodgers.
Rodgers, right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
and not even just Aaron Rodgers. What if this team had a serviceable quarterback? Because there's a lot of people who
Kirk
have
Cousins
who have
would
no
elevate this
faith,
offense.
yeah, in our guy Drew Lock, right? And there are people who really don't like Teddy Bridgewater. So when you really break down this offense, you're like, holy shit. Then you look at the strength of schedule, you look at the schedule in general outside of a fantasy perspective, you're like, and I mean, dude, Garrett Bowles is like one of the best tackles in the league.
Yeah,
Like he does not get talked about enough.
he's a
He is
stud.
a great tackle. And then you look at their defense, and it's like this defense doesn't have to play great. but they're pretty
I think
freaking loaded.
they're
Like
dude, having
their
Chubb and Von
secondary.
Miller, dude, Surtain had that freaking
Uh,
pick six, man.
yeah.
He had like a
Well, dude,
95 rating PFF wise.
when you
Dude's a
look
beast.
when you look at their starting corners, you've got Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby. Then your safeties, Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons. And then, yeah, some of those other corners are starting to step up. And you've still got Von Miller, probably my favorite overall player in the entire league, as your leader of this defense. And you guys
Mhm.
got Bradley Chubb. I mean, I don't know,
Dude, I
man.
think Patrick Surtain, their draft pick out of Alabama, I do think he is going to be one of the league's best corners in 3 years. This guy is an absolute lockdown corner, and I actually would make him my number one corner on this team, to be real.
It could happen,
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah, but honestly, just think about how crazy this might sound. Is there a team with more players that you'd want a part of offense wise in your draft? Like they have more people I want to draft than the Chiefs, for example.
Yeah.
I
And I
mean,
and I
they
think
have two
most of
running
it,
backs. They have
yeah,
three wide receivers. Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock could be a guy in a deep league. I mean, they are
sure.
pretty loaded, very heavy on depth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Uh, really, I don't think there's really that much to debate about these two running
No,
backs. It's just like go out and get the one that you have the most conviction in. Uh,
I
and
will say this though. I will say this about them. They, for me, I feel like they have hesitancy about Melvin Gordon. I don't
see,
know
I
if they
feel
actually believe in him, and that's why they also spent pretty high draft capital coming in and bringing in Javante Williams. And I mean, Melvin Gordon does have injury history throughout his career, so I don't
yeah,
know, but
I kind of feel the opposite, actually. I feel like they still believe that they went out and they got their guy in Melvin Gordon. And I think at the running back position, you're always drafting young guys. So I don't know. I'm going back and forth on that situation. But let's move on to my guy, Judy, baby. Judy!
yeah, dude. Yeah, yeah.
Judy!
I'm
So,
stealing from you, dude. I'm gonna take him in the third round or some shit.
hey, by the time week one draws closer, and I mean it's getting pretty close to prime fantasy drafting time. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of people are gonna be waiting till the first week of September, but it's not far away. And uh, from the time we started doing all of our research for these podcasts and kind of getting our data together, until now when we're recording this episode, Jerry Judy has moved up like 40 spots on the
Yeah.
wide receiver list. And I think it makes so much sense. I think he's going to have a great year. I think he will be the true wide receiver one in that
Mhm.
offense. Um, and I hope that Cortland Sutton comes out and is fully healthy. It's no knock on Cortland Sutton, who I think is a great receiver. But I think that if Sutton comes back healthy, it's only going to help Jerry Judy. Even if he's playing in a number two position, I think
Mhm.
that'll make him better. But I think if Sutton can't come out and play and be fully healthy, then Jerry Judy is obviously your number one receiver right
Mhm.
away. And that's no knock on Tim Patrick, baby. I
Dude,
love Tim Patrick, dude.
You dropped a video
Yeah.
about him, and I was like, I mean, this guy is the real deal, bro.
Yeah.
His season last year was like sneaky good, which your video highlighted.
Well, and I owned Tim Patrick last year in our league, but
Yeah.
also I swear I thought Tim Patrick was a rookie last year. When I went and like put together these stats, I was like, dude, this guy's been this is his fifth year coming up. I was like, what?
I didn't know that shit until this. So
Yeah, yeah, I was a little confused about that. But I think Tim Patrick as a wide receiver three is going to be a great player in this offense. So I'm all in on this offense.
Mhm.
And that was all I really had is in terms of fantasy is like how do we evaluate these running backs? And I think we already settled on that.
Yeah.
But I would just say add these three receivers to your draft board. If you play in
Mhm.
deeper leagues, Tim Patrick should be an absolute target. In a 20-man league, this should be without a doubt a target, right? But Jerry Judy's my guy. I mean, 52 receptions last year, 113 targets, just under 900 receiving yards, only three touchdowns. So hey, we can knock on him for the touchdowns, but from a PPR standpoint, I think he's going to have a great year. And this was an offense that in the red zone was primarily running the ball and looking to Noah Fant. So
Real quick before we jump, what are your thoughts on Noah Fant?
I
We're
was
going to
just
talk
about,
about the tight end rankings, but
yeah,
this guy is really, really talented.
I like Noah Fant a lot, but I think that every year we have this expectation
Hmm.
that he's going to come out and be like the next biggest thing. And once again, fourth easiest schedule amongst tight ends for this
Jeez,
group.
dude.
Um, and he only had 3 touchdowns last year, so he really wasn't that big of a red zone
Injuries.
factor. I mean, he ended up playing 15 games last year, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I
93
hated having
targets
him
last
last
year.
year. I hated
Yeah.
having him last year, dude. It was so annoying.
And that's the thing. Like, he's a guy who, if he had come out and put up like 6+ touchdowns, he would have been pretty elite, right? And that he's only scored 3 times in each of his 2 seasons, so 6 touchdowns in his career, right? Um, which really, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that bad, but from a fantasy perspective, it's very bad, right? And I like Noah Fan a lot, but I just don't. I'm not confident in him being my tight end one on a fantasy roster.
No.
Even with how much I like this team and I just gone over how fantasy relevant they should be, there are other guys being drafted after Noah Fant that I'm more confident in who have shown better red zone
Very fair.
capability. Um, like a well, TJ Hawkinson's now above him, right? But Mike Gesicki, I mean, even when you break down the numbers, Gronk had better numbers than
Hmm.
Noah Fant did last year. So I like Noah Fant a lot, but I'm just not sold on him as my tight end one. So that's where I'm with my guy Noah Fant. But once again, I like this offense.
I had him in my top 10 to start off my rankings for tight ends, and he has since shifted out of my top 12.
Yeah,
And let's not forget about, I cannot pronounce his name, but it's Albert Aquanbam. He played in a few games last year. And dude, this guy was like fantasy sleeper of the week on some fantasy advice boards. This
I
guy's
remember
really
that.
good
Yeah,
too. Yeah. So I don't know if Noah Fant's going to be the clear cut number one guy, but outside of that, I mean, I think we really ate up a ton of Broncos stuff here, but
you
hell
know
of a
who
good
is?
offense.
Yeah, no knock on that defense either, right? But you know who is a clear cut number one?
Justin Herbert.
Justin fucking Herbert. That's
Yeah, man.
right, man.
And the hair's
Uh,
coming back, dude. He's
It's
growing it out.
he's doing it for the
Yeah.
fans, bro. He
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Break down this Chargers team, baby. Let's do it.
Yeah, let me just say to start off, I talk a lot about hair of quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence said it
Yeah.
was Justin Herbert for a while. Like, dude, this guy gets his flow back. He gets his swag back. We could see him, jumping up to that top five. Currently
Based off the
ADP.
hair.
Yeah, just the hair. It doesn't really matter. He can have broken arms, no limbs. He could have no arms, no legs. And if he's got hair, he's going top five. Guaranteed pick. Lock it in. But ADP 71, QB number 8. I think just like the Chiefs, I think the buck stops here. This guy was the reason for the Chargers' success last year. The Chargers were put in a position where, they kind of just ended up with Justin Herbert. I think they would have been maybe happier with another guy coming into the draft, but they got the steal of the draft. This is, in my opinion, the next huge star to come out of here, out of the NFL. Best quarterback, in my opinion, outside of Mahomes and maybe other couple guys. I love him. I'm obsessed with him. And I think he does have the opportunity to get into that top 5, top 3, because he runs the ball too. Like, he can run it. He's trucked some linebackers, trucked some safeties. I think they might use him in the red zone a little bit too, because he is a bulkier guy. So I'll kind of push this back on you, but let's just start with Justin Herbert.
Sure.
Where do you have him in your rankings, like roughly, as well as like, is there another non-scramble quarterback that you would be happier with?
It's a
It's
loaded
tough.
question. I
It
mean, I
is. It
I do
is.
have him, kind of right in that same
That 5 to
around.
10.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got him actually right at a number 8, right? I
Yeah.
won't be surprised though if he comes out and he has a top 5 season, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did everything right last year. He got handed the starting job an hour. He had an hour's notice, right?
Yeah. They stabbed a
Um,
player to get him on the field. They literally almost killed somebody to put him on the field,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
That's how good this
I
guy
mean,
is.
rookie record for passing touchdowns, right? But all of that stuff aside, you just saw exactly what you want from a franchise quarterback out of him. And I was very close to making a Tua comment as a joke when you were talking about where they draft the draft process.
I'm glad you
But
didn't. I set you
but
up for it.
well, no, it's that serious in terms of Justin Herbert that he is that good, right? That
Yeah.
he is more than the steal of the draft. And like, sure, only time will tell, right? But what else can you see out of a rookie quarterback than what we saw last year from Justin Herbert? Uh, Probably the best rookie performance by a quarterback we've seen in some time. Like Baker did some really
Yeah.
great, fantastic things. Also, due to Tyrod Taylor being kicked,
Dude, it's always
Tyrod
tough.
Taylor, yeah, poor guy, right? And we like Tyrod Taylor, who might
Yeah.
start this year for the Houston Texans.
No,
Probably,
something bad's gonna happen
yeah,
week one,
yeah,
guaranteed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Deshaun's got a hitman out for him, but
Yeah.
I have Justin Herbert right at that number 8 ranking.
Mhm.
And
Dude, this line was bad last year too,
they
yo.
got better.
And the receiving core was bad, and
Yeah,
Justin Herbert still shined, and they've
it's
gotten so
true.
much better since then. Like, and they got rid of Anthony Lynn, who was like a sole reason for how many losses they had, as well as like poor red zone performance.
Sure. And I mean, in terms of, I mean, you look at his sack numbers, is what I'm getting at, and like, yeah, this line was bad. I mean, he got
Yeah,
sacked 32 times. He only threw 10 interceptions. Like, if you throw 10 or less interceptions and you throw above 30 touchdowns as a rookie, I mean, obviously he
that's
set the
elite.
record. If you throw
That's
more than
elite.
20 touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions as a rookie, it's great, And he was my fantasy quarterback for most of the year. And yeah, he kind of started, towards the end of the year to not be as fantasy
Elite.
spectacular.
Like just because he wasn't the
Yeah,
greatest,
yeah,
basically.
but that doesn't take away from what he did last year. So
Mm-mm.
I have nothing but good things to say about Justin Herbert, and I think that they did some things in the offseason kind of sneaky, right? I mean, they did obviously increase the talent on the offensive line. You got to
A
and
lot
get a
of
guy in the first round, uh, and a lot of people don't like the addition of Jared Cook. I mean, obviously you lose Hunter Henry, but Hunter Henry very injury prone, right?
already
Yeah.
injured.
Yeah, I think the addition of Jared Cook is really going to help Justin Herbert, and just having that
Hmm.
veteran presence on top of Keenan Allen, not just shipped out of the quarterback discussion. But I don't have anything else to say except I love Justin Herbert, and I think he's going to have a great improved sophomore campaign as well.
Now, I think that was actually a really good pivot there because my wide receiver that I picked for the Chargers, Keenan Allen, this is a
Underrated.
guy super underrated.
Yep.
And for that very reason, when I was doing my wide receiver rankings, which will be dropping soon again, I was like, gosh, how do I get this guy out of my top 10? And I couldn't do it. I was like, can I put Terry McLaurin over him? Who could I put over this guy? And I was like, you're talking about Keenan Allen, who has been Mr. Consistent and always getting better and is also paired up with Justin Herbert now. How do you not have this guy as like a top 10 wide receiver? And I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of fantasy experts or people that are really into this stuff know. But here's the thing, in your casual leagues, as well as like even if like you've got a lot of knowledgeable fantasy football people in your leagues, he's gonna slide. He's gonna slide relative to like what he's gonna turn up value wise. That's why currently he's at ADP 31, wide receiver 12. He's outside of that top 10. But if you're talking about like the rich, crazy talent that Keenan Allen has paired with Justin Herbert, who we're super high on, I just don't know how you can not put him there and not think that this guy's going to be an absolute steal. And the fact it's kind of like the Chiefs, like argument with Tyreek Hill. It's like outside of Keenan Allen, do we really think that there's another weapon here that's going to be on a consistent basis as a number two? I mean, we're going to talk about Mike Williams later, but he has always been injured. Keenan Allen is going to be there week to week and offer that catch value, that safety valve, and he
Yeah.
can make a lot of plays after he catches it.
I mean, from a PPR standpoint, 147 targets last year, fifth in the league. He was targeted, 10 plus times on more or on 10 games exactly. So those are
Jeez.
PPR standpoint. That's great. I think the only knock that you can really find on Keenan Allen is he's never scored more than 8 touchdowns in a season.
Yep.
Um, but and I mean, he's certainly an exceptional wide receiver too, from a fantasy
Mm-hmm.
perspective. If you have a guy that you drafted in front of him, like a Devonte Adams, a Tyreek Hill, and your strategy is to go receiver heavy, this is the perfect wide receiver too. Because I personally believe that with the change at head coach and with this unleashing of Justin Herbert at the quarterback position, that this will be the season that Keenan Allen scores more than 8 touchdowns.
Yeah,
And I don't think there's. I think this is the perfect time in his career to have kind of a breakout year. And it's. I mean, a breakout year is something crazy to talk about
because
because
he's so good every year.
yeah, he's fantastic. And I mean, he certainly hasn't had that year where he's really gone out and like shooken up the league. He's more of a consistent type of guy, right? But I
Hmm.
think this is a prime year for him to do so. So, um,
Well, let me ask you this: like, how many touchdowns could you see Justin Herbert throwing this year?
I mean, any close to 40, 45 is
Maybe
what.
over 40, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe over 40. He threw 30 last year, and again, wasn't even supposed to start.
yeah,
And then we also pair that with the fact that Keenan Allen is really the only guy coming into the season that I see being fantasy relevant at the
sure,
receiver position. Like, when you look at those two numbers, they are not exclusive. They are not
sure,
independent. That is a mutual beneficial relationship there.
sure.
So if you're high on Justin Herbert, you have to be high on Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it
It's
is.
a relatively tough strength of schedule at 21 overall, but I think you hit it, right on the dot, right? If you're high on this offense, which a lot of people are, then there's no reason to not
Mm-hmm.
be high on Keenan Allen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Well,
in agreement.
so in that running back rankings video, our one of our biggest disagreements was about this next guy. We're going to talk about my running back pick for the Chargers, Austin Eckler, ADP 21, running back 13. I had him in my top 12. I had him at running back rank number 10. This is a guy who I think is very, very, very talented. I don't think you argue that, but I
No,
think this is going to be his breakout year. I think
yeah,
he's going to see more red zone looks. I think if he stays healthy, he's now going to be again a part of this crazy offense where he's going to see a ton of pass catching opportunity volume, which just turns into more and more scoring. Because in terms of a PPR running back, he's like definitely top four, top five in my mind. Obviously, excluding guys like CMC and Kamara, but it's like this guy can catch with the best of them. He can line up a receiver. I mean, shit, I use him in Madden all the time, a receiver. I mean, this guy's
yeah.
fucking good, man.
I mean, I will say it's a very easy strength of schedule, seventh overall on
Yeah,
average. So, uh, I have him ranked. He was 15 on my RB list.
a little bit lower.
And it's really more just from a rushing standpoint, the lack of numbers, both scoring and overall from a rushing standpoint. But if this is the guy that you want from a PPR standpoint, then I can certainly see him doing what he did 2 years ago, where he had over 100 targets and 92 receptions. Right.
Yeah,
So I don't have anything bad to say about Austin Eckler. I just have him ranked a little bit lower. That's where I'm at with my
yeah.
conviction. But yeah, I think he's going to be a great aid to Justin Herbert. And you just think about, anytime Justin Herbert's under pressure, he's just going to be able to dump it off, right? Like Christian McCaffrey, right? Obviously, Austin Eckler only played in 10 games last year, so kind of hard to
I'm
evaluate,
hoping
right?
that goes up, right? Like if,
Yeah,
if he can get that up, I really don't think anybody knows how good his ceiling is. That's my point. Just
sure.
because of how like impactful a pass catching back can be for a fantasy team if you're not in standard
Okay.
leagues. But I will say, just before we move on to my next point here, if you are in a standard league, he is not top 10 for me.
Okay.
And I definitely think you would agree to that too. Like
Oh yeah.
his fantasy value is you have to evaluate him completely differently.
Sure.
But this next point, I think this is a pretty good debate here, pretty good like sticky point, something to really look at this offense because it's built very similar to the Chiefs almost. Is like, who is that other guy for this team? They have the same question that the Chiefs have. Can Mike Williams be that other guy? He's been the annual sleeper pick every year. They're like, all right, it's Mike Williams time. You know what I mean? Because
Sure.
this
Sure.
guy's super freaking talented.
Yeah.
But like he finds ways to get hurt. Like he'll like be coming out of the locker room, he'll
Yeah.
just be like, I gotta
Yeah.
get a
And
concussion today. Like
it's never like he's missing consecutive games. It's just that he's in and
some
out of
random
games.
shit. It's some
Yeah.
random
He's
shit that
played
happens.
he's played in 15 games his last 2 seasons, but it's just him coming in and out.
Yeah.
And in his sophomore year, we saw him come out and have 10 touchdowns. And if I'm not mistaken, one of those was like a super, oh my God, it was that super primetime game. Was it the Chargers and the Chiefs?
It
And
might have actually, yeah,
you know
it
what I'm
was.
talking
I
about?
know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like a super clutch. We're going to come back to that at
Yeah.
some point, but and that was like the moment we were like, oh, this guy could be for real. And then the next year, he came out from a PPR standpoint, had a very good year, but only two scores, right? And then last year is like, I mean, 650 receiving yards and five touchdowns, which are like
He
not
was
bad.
frustrating last year, dude. I thought he
Yeah,
was gonna be good the entire year, but he
yeah.
just never did it.
I think my point with Mike Williams overall is just where you can draft him.
Hmm.
Like for the most part, in 10 and 12 man leagues, like this can be your final selection. And I
Yeah.
think once again, if you have conviction in this offense and you believe in this offense lighting it up this year, then Mike Williams is extremely valuable. But I think even if you don't have conviction in this offense, right now where you can draft him in those lower man leagues, he just holds great value overall. Um, but
Who'd
I
you rather have, him or somebody on the Chiefs offense in that last two picks?
100% Mike
Yeah,
Williams. Yeah,
that's what makes
100%.
your point in cement right there, dude.
Sure.
Like this guy's so good for where you're getting him, just so good, and
Yeah.
he has the ability to score 10 touchdowns this season for sure. Because if we are projecting him to Justin Herbert to score 35 to 40 touchdowns, that touchdown's got to go to somebody, right?
Yeah.
And Keenan Allen can't score 40. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Yeah, and I mean, he's capable of being having wide receiver one type numbers essentially, right?
he's that talented.
But he is being ranked, up to like receiver number 55.
Mhm.
I've seen him ranked way lower on some, platforms out there. Like, so once again, I think everything you hit on is 100% right. If you think Justin Herbert is going to throw for 40 plus touchdowns, Keenan Allen, who we just talked about, never more than 8 touchdowns in a season, isn't going to be the only person benefiting. So,
Yeah,
um, my guy
I definitely
Jared,
think.
I was gonna
No,
say
go ahead. No,
my guy Jared Cook might be benefiting a little bit too. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So,
Why
yeah.
don't you talk about him? Because I feel like you do have a better relationship with him than I do. I mean, I feel like
I
this
don't
is
know, man. That's
somebody.
a guy that you were targeting like the last 3 years in fantasy. I
I'd target him, and then like at the last second, I'd be like, nah, fuck
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I would just get scared. But then, like, dude, this guy is like, he reminds me of like a super age. He's like a Jimmy Graham almost. Like
He's
he just like does like he's there
And
every
I
week.
love Jimmy Graham from a football
I know.
perspective. I think he is a Hall of Famer, but that's a
He
different
just,
topic for a different night. But Jared Cook is 34 years old. Don't get me wrong. Like
yeah,
he is a veteran presence,
he's
but
dusted.
he's only had one season his whole career under 500 receiving yards, right? And the last 3 years he's scored six or more touchdowns. Um, he's
With the
coming
Saints
to
offense, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say
Which,
he's coming to a stable,
yeah,
offense with at least a stable quarterback, right? Because we saw some injuries to Drew Brees in the last 2 years or so. We
Taysom
saw
Hill.
our guy Taysom, your favorite guy after Adam Trotman, go in and out, and
Yeah.
Jameis Winston is coming in. So it's like he's coming to an offense that many, once again, are expecting to be absolutely electric. We're expecting Justin Herbert to take off. And it's just the same argument that you make for Mike Williams. It's the same argument you're going to make for Jared Cook. If you
Yeah.
believe in this offense, if you believe in Justin Herbert taking off and throwing for 40 plus touchdowns, then why doesn't Jared Cook have at least 400 to 600 receiving yards and five touchdowns, right?
It's worth a late round snag,
And
especially
you can
because
get, once again, this can be your final selection. And I'm not saying go out and get Jared Cook as your tight end one, unless you're in like a 20 man league, then you might consider it,
he's
right?
in my top 24
Yeah.
rankings actually at tight
Sure,
end.
he's in mine too, right?
Yeah.
But it's the perfect argument for a tight end
Mhm.
too. If you can flex a tight end in your league, if that's something you do, this is a guy you should go out and draft late because right now you can get him super late. So I just think once again it comes down to the conviction that you have with this offense and our guy Justin Herbert throwing for 40 plus touchdowns this year.
And before we pivot over to a team with an absolutely badass tight end, Darren Waller,
Sure.
I just want to highlight one other guy who might be a sleeper on this offense. at tight end, Donald Parham Jr., who played a little bit last year and saw some serious red zone targeting from Justin Herbert. He scored a few different times. He looks pretty damn good. There was a few weeks where I actually thought about picking him up, ended up not doing it. But, if Jared Cook comes into the season and does look a little bit too dusted, Donald Parham's going to come in, and I think he has a higher upside than Jared Cook does. So just keep your eyes on him. He might be a, week 5,
Steven,
week 6 waiver.
Steven keeps his eyes on those tight ends pretty
Oh, I keep them
frequently.
on. You guys hear me talking about my tight ends now. 6'5", 250.
But hey, don't sleep on this defense either, man.
No,
I mean, I don't think they're going to be the best defense in the league,
I got both.
but let's, Derwin James Jr. coming back healthy. Let's hope.
Yeah,
Let's hope. Joey Bosa, maybe the
Yeah.
best D end in the league. Chris Harris is still here, that veteran presence. So don't sleep on this defense, but
top
don't,
12 in my opinion this year. We'll
Yeah.
definitely go over that too.
don't have crazy expectations.
Yeah,
Definitely don't have any expectations for the Raiders defense, or maybe the Raiders in general.
coaching for sure. Don't want to
Outside of my boy Josh Jacobs, we all know how I feel about Josh Jacobs. So, okay, my trio, and we do these. We literally do a random team list generator, right? And the last like 2 or 3 podcasts, which I don't mind. I don't mind. I like kind of digging into kind of the bad teams and trying to find some glory, right? My
Yeah.
trio, our guy Derek Carr, who if I'm not going to hate on anyone outside of Josh Jacobs, it's probably Derek Carr, right? The little brother of David Carr, the legend, right? And then I've got I've got Josh Jacobs as well as Henry Ruggs. So Derek Carr, I mean QB number 24 on average, ADP number 182 on average. I do want to say he really
He's underrated, yo. I'm telling you.
I do want to
Actually,
say
is he? I don't know.
I go so back and forth. Like
Yeah, I don't know.
I think well when you look at his stats, yeah, he is underrated. If he was on a different team, how good could he be, right?
I wanted the Colts to get him so fucking bad. Like, I can't
Because
stress that enough.
over 4,000 passing yards the last 3 years. I mean,
Always over 20 touchdowns.
27 touchdowns last year. Remember when he was like about to be possibly the MVP and he got hurt
Yeah.
right before the playoffs and like I don't
He
know,
threw
man.
32 touchdowns back in 15.
I guess
That's crazy.
the only point I'm trying to make is that if he was on a different team, I think people would have a very different uh, opinion on him overall. And I like Derek Carr a lot, and I think it's kind of weird. I feel like the Raiders don't really want him there. They've got a pretty difficult schedule overall in terms of fantasy. At least at the quarterback position for sure. I mean, it's 20th overall, and it's not great. I mean, running back, it's 26 overall. Receivers, I need to take this back. It's actually abysmal for all
Yeah.
positions. Receivers, it's 32nd. It is the hardest in the league on average.
That's
So
pretty fucking bad.
I like part of me wants to say like in deeper leagues and if you're looking, super flex leagues, if you need a second quarterback, if you absolutely drop the bomb on quarterback, you need someone late. Part of me wants to say Derek Carr is a pretty safe option, like similar to Kirk Cousins, but I have a pretty bad outlook on this team overall outside of Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. And part of that might just be that I'm so hung up on those guys being good this year that I have to stick with it. But I certainly understand the arguments against Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake, right? Because before we talk about them, because I don't really have anything else to say about Derek Carr, right? Like part of me wanted to come out and say, and this is kind of my fantasy question for the night. Is Henry Ruggs worth drafting at all? Because it's that same argument I make for a lot of those late round receivers is like you can draft them super late and someone has to catch the fucking football for this team. And this is your wide receiver one at the moment is Henry Ruggs. I don't think he can be a wide receiver one. I think when they drafted him, they wanted him to be number 2 type of guy. And you've got John Brown on this team. If I'm drafting any receiver on this team, it's John Brown because he's proven.
You love John Brown.
I've always loved John Brown. And I
Yeah.
love him in Madden. Maybe that's where it
Yeah.
comes from, right? But
Yeah.
John Brown was like my sleeper last year. Like
He ended up being a beast.
I didn't talk to anyone about John Brown. Like anytime I was talking fantasy, all I could think was don't mention John Brown. Like I got to
Yeah.
be able to draft that guy, right? And I think the Bills shouldn't have let him go, although they replaced him with
No,
Emmanuel Sanders. But
I
he
think he's
fits
better
so
than Emmanuel
well.
Sanders for that offense.
Sure, I don't disagree. But yeah, I think like someone out there is going to draft Henry Ruggs, and he could end up being serviceable, but they've got a tough schedule in terms of
Yeah.
receivers, like I mentioned. And I mean, Hunter Renfro is like a pretty decent receiver, right? But I just don't think he's that guy. And Willie Snead is on this team once again, like a serviceable receiver, but none of these guys are going to be the guy, in my opinion. And they have such a difficult schedule that I just want nothing to do with them. Like I said, in deeper leagues, if I have to pick someone, it's John Brown, right? But let's dive into these running backs because all off season, like you guys have heard me go out and say it. Like, if you're keeping up with our mock drafts, like I'm surprised I haven't got any shade for my love of Josh Jacobs because I've been getting some hate for like DK Metcalf
I'm
recently.
about to create accounts just to shit on you for it,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, we did our RB ranking videos, which will be dropping soon. I have Josh Jacobs ranked super high, and yeah, I just don't understand like the complete disregard for Josh Jacobs, who performed very well last
Mhm.
year. You know, a top 10 running back last year in terms of fantasy. I just don't see how there's going to be such a large drop off. But I will say that this offensive line got way worse in the offseason.
They
Like
gutted it. They got rid of
I,
everyone.
I don't know what their goal was there. And I will say they did not do anything to help Josh Jacobs this year. But I guess my argument just lies with I just don't see how there's going to be such a large drop off. And I get it. I get that they went out, they gave Kenyon Drake a bag, that John Gruden, excuse me, is in love with Kenyon Drake.
Hmm.
I believe in Josh Jacobs, and that's just where I'm at. And that's really all I can say about it. It's kind of like there are other guys out there that I just believe in. And I think from a fantasy perspective, that's part of how fantasy works. And that's part of what makes, believe it or not, winning fantasy teams. Because you can get pretty caught up in the stats, you can get pretty caught up in the logistics, and sometimes I always say it, your guess is as good as mine, right? Really weird things happen from a fantasy perspective.
Let me
And
ask you this though, real
sure,
quick, because when I look at this Raiders team, what they've done this offseason, when I look at John Gruden at where he is in his contract and the lack of success he's had, Mike Mayock and the lack of success he's had, specifically how they gutted that offensive line and how they built this roster, bringing in Kenyon Drake, I have started to think they are changing up the offensive game plan strategy coming into next season to be that of fitting the model of Derek Carr back in college, which was structured around quick dump off passes, very fast time passes to slants, dump
sure.
off screens, things like that, right? And that's why, for me, fantasy value in terms of if I'm willing to take a back on this team, it's actually Kenyon Drake because you can take him at 99 and
Yeah,
he's going to be your third down back guaranteed every play, might see first and second down snaps. And I think he actually is somebody that this organization probably likes more because bringing in a guy like Kenyon Drake, they might just be looking to kick off Josh Jacobs relatively soon, who has not proven to have been a third down back so far with the Raiders for whatever reason.
sure.
But I just really want to hammer in here that my analysis of this Raiders team is I think they are actually going to try to focus on that type of game plan that is really heavy on getting these short passes out and
Yeah,
time, tempo,
yeah,
because the Raiders, one of the best things about this team last year was that O line and the run game over the past two seasons, actually.
yeah.
And they said, fuck that, right? So if they actually don't have a model of like what I'm saying, this team is going to be worse than we both think. And we
Sure.
already are super low on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that's the
Yeah.
game plan. And,
I
and
mean, and when you look at Kenyon Drake last year, he wasn't making, his value from the passing game. Actually, it was really banked on from a rushing standpoint.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't disagree, and I think that they've obviously added a lot of speed, between Ruggs and Brown, and the other guys who are talented from a receiving standpoint are those like slot type receivers, right? So I
Ruggs
think
was used at Alabama
yeah,
all in the slot, like doing
yeah,
those screen passes. That
and
was
even
where
like
Ruggs did
Hunter
good.
Renfro and Willie Snead, like I mentioned, like those are just slot guys, and it's no
Yeah,
knock on them, but that's where they play their best football, right? Um, So yeah, and I mean, I certainly agree that I think Kenyon Drake is a great late round value. The reason I stopped drafting Kenyon Drake, started moving away from him, is because I kept taking Josh Jacobs
yeah.
early on, and I think
I
it's
don't
kind.
want two backs on this offense.
I don't
That'd be a
either.
night.
I
That'd be
think
a
you
nightmare.
once again, similar to the Broncos, you need to have conviction in one or the other, and if that's your guy, that's your guy, right? But at the moment, I'm still high on Josh Jacobs, and we'll see if I put my money where my mouth is when it comes time to draft. And
This defense is so
yeah,
shitty. This
Richie
defense is
Incognito is
sick.
still on this team, so let's
Wow,
end
that's
let's let's end our Raiders conversation
yeah.
and just talk about
Please,
Marcus Mariota for a minute.
I would.
I'm joking. Let's talk about Darren Waller. Darren Waller, I mean, absolute monster. And it's kind of funny. Like I went out and I picked Henry Ruggs for my trio just from a debate
I saw that
standpoint.
and I was like, "What the hell is
Yeah,
this guy
yeah.
doing?"
That was kind of a joke too. It's obviously Darren Waller. Like I saved it for the end because I knew there's just so many negatives around this team as a whole, and for most people, it's really all negatives outside of Darren Waller. I just have a thing for Josh Jacobs, apparently, right? But Darren Waller, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, is, in my opinion, he is just a hair below Travis Kelsey.
Mhm.
And I think he is really the only thing that makes this team in any way relevant whatsoever, right? And don't get me wrong, 2 seasons ago he only had 3 scores and right around 1,100 receiving yards. Last year, just under 1,200 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. But I think if he can continue to do what he did last year and he could do it for a couple more years consistently, he's right up there, man. I mean, and I know like George Kittle gets a big knock because he was injured, so his stats don't look as good. But I would put Darren Waller right up there with Kittle and with Kelsey, and I think
I would
he's
take in terms of dynasty value and long term value. If I could trade Travis Kelsey for Darren Waller, that would be something that I would consider this year
sure,
because Travis Kelsey is a hell of a lot older, and Darren Waller is like he is the offense.
yeah,
Like everything goes through him.
yeah, and I think that's literally where we have to leave it, right? Is like Darren Waller is the offense, right? And I 100% agree. As much as I like Josh Jacobs, as much as I think Kenyon Drake is a great late round value,
Mm-hmm.
as everything else we just went over, the only guy that you need to have your eyes fixated on is Darren Waller. And I actually like the idea more of going out and getting a running back in fantasy early on and then moving to the second or third round and getting Darren Waller as opposed to going out and getting Travis Kelsey in the first round and then waiting and getting a running back. As many good running backs as there still will be in the second round.
Yeah.
I like kind of Darren Waller. If you can get him as your third player on your roster, I think he's an absolute fucking steal,
And
man.
that's what I was going to say about Travis Kelsey earlier, just before we close on the Raiders here, is that like, if you take Kelsey in the one of like the first round, you're obviously losing serious value at the running back and receiver positions, which are super important. But if you can take Darren Waller in the third and just have the discretion to be able to take two running backs in the first 2 rounds, I think your team walks away and is a better team overall.
Absolutely.
And so it really is a matter of like, even though Travis Kelsey is the clear cut best tight end, I just think you're still getting a stud at tight end. And outside of the top four, it's such a big drop off. Like, really, you just really want to get a top four tight end.
Sure. All right, let's move on. That's
Yeah.
it. I mean, Nathan
Yeah.
Peterman is on this team too, if you want to talk about him.
Just the absolute pick god, dude.
All right, so over under segment, let's crack right into it, man.
Yeah.
Chiefs, we've got him at 12 point. Well, we don't have him. DraftKings has him at 12.5 wins this year. Man, I'll be the first to say it.
Over.
Man, I'm telling you, I'm really tempted to take the under here. This is a
whoa,
this is a pretty tough schedule, man.
whoa.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm really torn. Like I don't
Is this
even
because of Josh Jacobs? Like, I don't know.
no, dude. Like for real, like I think they have a really tough schedule. Like, and I think that they have a lot of those 50-50 games too. And I'm as much as I like the Chiefs, like I said, I'm a little like worried about them too. And I do you think like there's a little bit of a Super Bowl loss lag here? Like I don't know because
No,
I think the easy answer is to say no and to say like this team's going to be like fantastic as
no.
always. Um, I'll say this. I'll say this much. My floor is 10 wins. Like they will win 10 games.
He wins, bro.
Dude, I'm
Oh,
serious, bro. And I think a big part of it is the emergence of the Chargers as a whole
yeah.
and the emergence of the Broncos potentially coming out and being a very good team. And
The
the
Raiders
Raiders
low-key have
beat
their
the
number. They
the
low-key have their
Raiders
number.
beat them last year.
Yeah,
Okay?
they low-key have
That
their number.
that is the biggest part of the whole equation is that this division within itself is very competitive.
Yeah,
And then like I mean, just think about this stretch: Cleveland,
it's tough.
Baltimore, the Chargers. I'm not going to count Philly, but you could argue Philly's a 50-50 team.
No.
Buffalo, Washington,
Yeah,
Tennessee, a
Tennessee.
very bad team in New York, but then Green Bay, Vegas, argument,
And then
then
Dallas.
Dallas, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there are some
that is pretty
tough
bad.
games, and then you have a lot of division games to end out the season, and you face off against Pittsburgh, who's going to be a very good, at least defensively, very good. So I'm just saying, man, like when you really look at it, as much as I love this offense, as
Yeah.
much as I love this coaching staff, as much as I love Patty Mahomes, his entire team, I'm I'm a little worried. Like they're going to make the playoffs, and that's all that matters. Because once this team is in the playoffs, they can beat any team in the NFL, right? But in terms of looking at the over/under segment, and how many games they're going to win in the regular season, I'm a little worried. I'm not as sure that I'm going to go out and say that this team is going to win 13 or 14 games this year. But that's my
Yeah,
two cents. I'll let you
I
talk.
honestly, I mean, I think you make a great argument for the reverse of what I think. I mean, I think they're going to hit the over, but when I went through their games, I picked 13. And a large part of that is just like in my head, I really don't see the Chiefs losing like
Sure,
that many games. Like,
sure.
and again, like it's like kind of like just like this, you never want to bet on that kind of thing, right? It's just like oh, it can never happen, right? A lot of people lost some money in the Super Bowl because of that. But it's like,
Did you
I
lose
just,
money?
I didn't actually in that game. I lost it in
I'm
the
just fucking
conference
with you.
championship though. But no, I don't know. I still see them being able to wipe out a lot of their teams in the division. I do think the Chargers are improved, but I think the Chiefs do still hit the over slightly. And I think, flipping over to the Chargers, they've got them at over under 9.5. I think they go under on that. So again,
Really?
I mean, because these guys have a hard schedule too. Like
They do
they
have a hard
they start
schedule.
off
Yeah.
with Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, Vegas, Cleveland, Baltimore.
Yeah.
Like this is not as good of a team as as the Chiefs are.
Sure. I think that first stretch before their bye week, those first 6 games, I won't be surprised if they come out 1-6, bro. But I'm telling you, that second stretch after their bye week, I think they could potentially only lose like 2 of those games.
I mean, dude, you've still got, you talk about your 50-50 games, right? You got the
Sure.
Patriots. I think the Patriots will beat them. They've got the Steelers. You've got Minnesota, who is no slouch. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, and you got the Broncos to also kind of close up as well. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more winnable games on that backstretch. But I think another thing too that baked into this 9.5 with DraftKings is that there's so much excitement about Justin Herbert. It's like,
Sure.
how much pressure can you put on this guy? And dude, this team, like Justin Herbert was a dog last year. This team was dog shit. Like
Sure.
this team was so bad last year.
Sure.
So
I
let's
mean,
not like get gassed.
yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like you shouldn't just look at this team and say, oh yeah, like they're gonna win every game, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm taking the over, but I'm like right there at like 10 wins, man. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
I've heard the argument for this team to win the division, and like I'm not there, bro. I've heard it, dude, and most of it actually has to do with a lot of what I just went over with the
Yeah,
Chiefs, bro. But like I'm taking the over, and I think the ceiling's 11 games, and I think the floor is like 8 games.
yeah.
So um, it's a really interesting division. Like I meant to mention that at the beginning of this podcast because I think like the NFC and AFC East are two super interesting, really like divisions that you got
Yeah.
to break
My
down. Our last 2 episodes, right? And I think this division is equally as interesting, and I think the NFC West is also very interesting. Who will be going over next
mhm.
week? But it's a really interesting division, man. And that brings us to the Broncos, which makes the equation just as difficult. And DraftKings has got them at 8.5 wins, and I'm not ready to take the over or the under. Like I've got them right at 8 wins for myself personally,
Mhm.
um, but
I think that's
I think
fair.
their floor could be lower. Like it could be 6 or 7
I think
wins.
their floor could definitely be lower, but I think I'm definitely the under on these guys. Like we talk about how much talent there is on this team, this offense, this defense, but this team, dude, having a stud quarterback is, or even just a competent quarterback is so important. And
Yeah.
they clearly just don't have that right now. And I don't think Teddy
Yeah.
Bridgewater nor Drew Lock can really make this team an 8.5 win squad.
Sure. Have you seen? This is what I love about Drew Lock. It's like that sideline video of him.
And rapping and dancing or some
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, he's
Oh
like
my
rapping
gosh,
to
bro.
put on by Young Jeezy, and I'm like, yeah, man,
That is
that's
how,
that's a franchise quarterback, right? Yeah,
us back in the day with our Air
yeah,
Forces, yeah, at private school, untucked shirts,
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
We are Drew Lock. We are Drew Lock.
Drew Lock is us if we made it, bro. Like for real.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, like I said, I like Drew Lock as a guy. And every time I hear a knock on him, I'm like,
He's probably a great stud, dude. You know,
yeah,
great character. You know, I'd want my daughter to marry him.
yeah.
You
But
know,
yeah, I'm right there. Like 8 wins is where I see this team, and very close to being like a very complete roster.
well,
Really,
let's so let me ask you this,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the Raiders, I mean, do they have Josh Jacobs, dude? So what is this? 16-0 team? Like, I mean, did they win their first 16? Like, I don't know. Does Josh Jacobs have 3,000 rushing yards? I think what they might do is trade for Tua in the first week. And
Okay.
holy shit, yo.
So I've got the under on the Raiders, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually think as much as I like my guy Josh Jacobs, uh, I mean, and they have a very tough stretch.
Yeah.
Like, if you go out and you're me, I'm like the only guy who's gonna do this, and you draft Josh Jacobs early on. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Miami, L.A. Chargers, Chicago,
Chicago,
Denver,
Denver,
and
Philly.
Philly.
I think they could lose all those games.
Oh my god! And even just from a rushing standpoint, bro, like
That's bad.
go ahead and throw me shade in the comments for loving Josh Jacobs just based off of the first 7 weeks. And then,
Dude, but this is how they finish their schedule too.
yeah,
Dallas, Washington, Kansas City, Cleveland, Denver, Indy, Chargers.
bro, they might be tanking for whoever the next Tua is, right? Whoever the
Is
next.
John Gruden on the hot seat? I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up, yo. The Gruden grinder, is he back at
I,
ESPN?
I mean, I think absolutely, but I'm trying to think of that contract and if they can let him go.
10-year, 100 million?
Yeah, like he should be on the hot seat like 10 years ago, like before they even
Yeah.
hired him. Yeah. And
Dude,
like,
he said he would refund the Raiders if they didn't make it, dude. Like,
yeah.
I don't see him doing that.
And I do want to put this out there. I think we both like John Gruden,
I
like
love him. I
as an
love him.
announcer, and like, yeah, I think we like him once again, like as a guy, like a lot. But man, has this been, I don't, a disaster? Is it
Dude,
safe
he
to
he
say?
literally, like, watching his commentating, he would be like, "Oh yeah,
Prob-
that guy's a Gruden grinder," and he would be like the fifth string player, and nobody would know his name. And I feel like that's what he does
yeah.
with like picking up players. Like he's like
Dude,
Nathan Peterman throws 10 picks, we need him on the team.
I've seen like a mashover of like the Raiders announcing their selections at the draft, and then it like pans to the fans, and then it plays the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song,
Oh
and
my
it's like that's
gosh.
really like what Mike Mayock and dude, once again, like we
I
love Mike
love,
Mayock,
yeah,
bro. Like
yeah, we're obsessed with him.
yeah, but I
I
just
want to beat
think
him.
it's just not working out, right?
Yeah.
It's not happening, whatever they envisioned. And maybe part of what they envisioned was just bringing in big ticket names to build the fan base in Vegas. But you got to think, man, if this season, I mean, like, in all honesty, this team could lose every game this year. Like, I'm taking the under, man. And, like, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. Like, I do still think they're that smash mouth team that's just going to come out and put it all on the field and do whatever they can possibly to potentially beat you, right? But overall, I just don't see this team winning more than like
Mhm.
5 games, man.
Well, honestly, I think that's like kind of a perfect way to wrap up this show
Yeah.
because we talked about how rich the top heaviness is of this division and how like sketchy the bottom is with the Raiders. But at the end of the day, there's still fantasy value there with Darren Waller. But I mean,
And Josh
shit.
Jacobs.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a more like exciting division to talk about? That's why I was hyped for this one, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
super pumped that we've gotten into this. This is
yeah,
quarterback heaven here in the AFC West.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, super fun division, man. It's going to be a great year of football.
Yeah,
Like you can feel it in your veins.
yeah,
Like the Chiefs, man, what Patrick Mahomes has done for this league. I
yeah.
mean, it's unbelievable. So we'll cap it off, baby. AFC West done and finished. NFC West coming up. What a
Yeah.
dirty, filthy division as well,
There's
man.
no floor to that division. Every single
No.
team is like stacked.
For like
Yeah.
the 4th year in a row, man.
This
I
is the
mean,
best division in football,
I'm
hands
telling you,
down.
man, like I don't want to get too much into him as much as I like Russ. Like Russ
Yeah.
is my guy. Like Kyler Murray, I feel like might be
Trey
that.
Lance,
Oh my gosh,
Matthew
dude.
Stafford. I
Yeah.
mean, dude,
Sean,
it's
I mean,
loaded.
yeah. So look
You
out
got
for
Jimmy
next week.
GQ, bro. You got Jimmy
Yeah,
GQ.
you got GQ in there, man. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, a lot of good divisions. I think we are ending this series with two of the very best in
Yeah,
football.
man.
So we thank you all very much for watching and or listening. As always, shout out to all of our subscribers,
Mm-hmm.
baby, coming out, showing love and support these past 2 weeks, man.
Yeah,
You guys
man.
have been great. We truly 100% appreciate it. We are putting blood, sweat, and tears into this
Mm-hmm.
channel, man. You
I
guys mean
cried
the
last
world.
night.
Stephen cries a lot more than we want to mention. But
Yeah.
hey, in all seriousness, thank you all so much. And if you guys enjoyed this podcast, if you made it this far, please consider subscribing for more future content like this, as well as much, much more fantasy content. And go ahead and smash
Mm-hmm.
that like button while you're at it, man. And leave some comments down below. It truly means the world to us. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all we got, man. This was the catch, baby. Your boy John, your boy Steven. We
Yeah.
wish you all a great night. Steven, you got any closing thoughts?
No, man, just like how much I want to just piggyback off of that, dude. We really support all the help out there, guys. I mean, John and I will be working and calling each other every time we get a sub, or get a comment. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, oh,
this
yeah,
is everything to us, man. And we
yeah.
just love that you guys are part of the ride. Everybody out there, give us our comments, give us our feedback, and we're always happy to do content specifically for you. That's something we really pride ourselves on in this podcast is it's a podcast for you, not just for us. And it's not just for a general audience. We want it to be tailored. So I really hope y'all are having a great week. Get hyped, do your mock drafts. John's been pumping these out left and right. Shout out Made for TV. I saw him call you out.
I was about to say, bro.
Yeah,
I'm about to
yeah.
say, shout out Made for TV _ shout out KJ, shout out Legendary Sports Card, shout out Champagne Matt, shout out People's Voice, calling me out for my sipping being cringe in the middle of that mock draft. Eric Ball, shout out for telling me where to do a 20-man draft. My boy Alex, my boy John B calling me out for picking Montgomery over McLaurin. I mean, we got all kinds
That is
of
a weird pick.
Madison Dockery. We see you, Noel Chaka. I mean, hey, we appreciate it, man. It means the world to us. The Catch fam is for real, and we will remember these moments years down the road,
man.
baby. So,
Mhm.
100% great podcast. Let's cap it off. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch, baby.
Let's get it.